What are the biggest what ifs in this sport this year? What if Ole Miss wins the SEC? That's a really big one. Oh, Josh, that can't happen. Well, it hasn't happened. You're right. You're right. One of Meemaw's golden rules: don't lose to food. So watch out if you're playing rice. But one of Meemaw's other golden rules is just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it can't happen. Ole Miss has got an over/under win total of 9.5 this year. They're among the odds favorites to win the SEC. They're up there in the top 4. And they've got the 4th best odds, so not top 4. They are number 4. If it happens, though, if they win the SEC, having never appeared in the SEC title game before, well, it means the experiment paid off. They've leaned about as heavily on the portal as any SEC program has. Can that work? Can that work? Well, if they win it, it's a pretty telltale sign it worked. Was the SEC down? So if this happens, that's one thing. How did it happen? Why did it happen? Was Georgia just not what we thought they'd be? Was Bama? Was Texas? Were a bunch of teams down? And Ole Miss was just the best of a bunch of pretty good? Or did Ole Miss win slugfests against the best? Did they maybe beat Georgia twice? Or did they split with Georgia when they got a second shot in Atlanta? Those sorts of questions I'd be interested in. And if they win the SEC, the logical follow-up is, can they win it all? They're going to the playoff if they win the SEC. I think they're going to the playoff if they just are in the SEC title game. Can they win it all? And what does this do for Lane Kiffin? Lane Kiffin is a legend if he does this. Lane Kiffin's doing what no one's really done in the modern era of like color TV at Ole Miss. So the story of Lane Kiffin, do you realize what kind of documentary we're seeing playing out in real time in front of our eyes with what Lane Kiffin's doing at Ole Miss? Pretty crazy. Another what if. Fingers crossed. What if the Big Ten is not so top-heavy this year? What if it is more than Ohio State and Michigan? And Oregon enters the equation, so they'll have a lot to say about that. Penn State's got a win total of 9.5. But let's look elsewhere, because if it's not top-heavy, I don't assume it's because Ohio State came back to the pack and Oregon came back to the pack. I assume it's because a lot of other programs that have been average raised their level of play. And it's very simple what has to happen here. Offense has to be a lot better. This is a Sarah McLachlan special of a stat. 6 offenses in that conference were 117th or worse in yards per game last year. Horrifically bad. Think about this. Colin, keep this up for a second. Immunity. Indiana was 101st in the country in yards per game offensively last year. And there were 6 offenses worse than that in their conference. That is bowling shoe ugly. That is dog water disgusting. Horrible. So, Iowa, improve. That could make the Big Ten not so top-heavy. Nebraska, Wisconsin, improve. And that would make the Big Ten not so top-heavy. Penn State, they've been pretty good. James Franklin thinks they'll be better offensively this year. Okay, I'm listening to that. Rutgers, most workable schedule in the conference. Greg Schiano, sleeves already rolled up, no matter what time of day it is. USC with Lincoln Riley, kind of a wild card in this discussion because offense isn't a problem there. They got the other problem. Maybe the Big Ten won't be so top-heavy, or maybe it will be. That's why it's a what if. Thirdly, what if Cam Rising comes back better than ever? Well, we'll need a new producer for the show. For those of you who are new around here, producer Jesse has not shown his face on camera, but producer Jesse looks a lot like Cam Rising. Some have gone as far as to question whether they've seen Cam Rising and producer Jesse in the same place. And if he comes back better than ever from injury this year, what is his best? Well, back in 2022, 3,000 yards passing, had another 500 on the ground. He limited turnovers, 64.7% completion guy, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. He ran for 6 touchdowns. If it produces at that level, they'll probably win the Big 12. They'll probably be in the playoff. And look, he's a 7th-year guy who is eligible for an 8th year, I think it is. I think he's playing his 7th. He's eligible for an 8th. Anyway, he's been non-committal. I think actually in the preseason he said, nah, 7's enough. Like, what a sentence to actually be able to say, hey, man, if he plays at that level, maybe someone gives him a shot in the NFL. Maybe he wants to come back again. Why would you turn down a career as a college football quarterback? That's what he is at this point, a career college football quarterback.